Welcome, everyone. We are going to give everyone a minute to get logged on, and then we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a sec. We're going to let everybody get logged on. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Vendor Pre-Solicitation Conference for the RFO DIR-CPO-TMP-582 Dell branded products and related services. Before we get started, we're going to go over a few housekeeping rules and notes. I would like to let everyone know that they can switch between their computer audio and phone call. All attendees are muted. And if everybody could please raise their hand to confirm that they can hear me. Perfect. Thank you so much. You can lower them. Thank you. The chat will be disabled. So if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A and we will answer them in the questions section. The handout will be available in the addendum. So please keep that in mind. I will now turn it over to Jared. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our pre-bid conference. My name is Jared Fortenberry. I'm the procurement lead for 582 Dell branded services. Dell branded products and related services. And Stephanie Harrison is not able to make it today, so I'll be covering her portion where we talk about the vendor portal. And also with us, we have Marie Cohan, the statewide digital accessibility program manager. She'll be going over some of the accessibility considerations. And then Teresa Williamson, our hub program manager, will be going over the hub subcontracting plan and those details. Next slide, please. So just a quick look at our agenda. We're going to look at the RFO. We're going to do an overview, look at some of the contents, the scope, the evaluation criteria. We're going to talk about the term of contracts, the schedule, the hub questions, hub considerations, EIR questions and considerations. Then we're going to go over a little bit of general information. We'll look at the bid stamp vendor information system, or VIS. We're going to take a look at how you want to submit the pricing sheet. We'll take a look at your mandatory submission requirements, so the documents you have to submit to prevent disqualification. Then we'll take a little bit of a break. During the course of our presentation, like we said earlier, if you have any questions, you can submit those into the question button there. And then once we get back from the break, we'll address as many of those questions as we can. And I would say we repeat this throughout the solicitation, the conference, but any questions and answers that are answered today are unofficial until they're actually posted to the ESBD. And then we will depart. Next slide, please. So a quick overview. The purpose of this RFO is to solicit responses for Dell branded products and related services to the state of Texas, acting by and through the Department of Information Resources. This is a resolicitation of a prior solicitation, DIR-CPO-TMP-582, and DIR may make multiple awards from this RFO. Next slide, please. Just taking a quick look at the historical spend. So we don't have the FY 2023 data just yet, but in 2020, overall, we had about 2.5 billion in sales. It went up to 2.7 billion in 2021 and just over 3 billion in 2022. And we expect the same for 2023. Those numbers continue that trend. And then for the prior the contracts that came out of the prior solicitation, 251. The sales in 2020 were about almost 600 million. In 2021, about 730 million. 2022 was about 728 million. And then as of a few months ago, the FY23 sales were about 405 million. So that's gone up since then. Next slide, please. We're going to take a look at some of the contents now. So the documents you're going to be looking at when you open this RFO, we have Exhibit A, respondent information, Exhibit B, history and experience, Exhibit C, your marketing and support plan, Exhibit D, your hub subcontracting plan or HSP, Exhibit E, your pricing sheet, Exhibit F are your reference forms that you'll have your prior clients send in. Next slide. And then we have Exhibit G, the respondent release of liability. You've got your Edgar certification form and Exhibit H. Exhibit I is the PDAA. Exhibit J is your VPAT. And Exhibit K is your VADSIR. Next slide. And just to add a little bit of detail, so your respondent information form, Exhibit A, you have to fill this out in its entirety, and it has to be signed by an officer or agent empowered to contractually bind your entity. And you also need to complete the cancel contract references if possible. Exhibit B, your respondent history and experience. So you're going to want to provide a detailed response to every question that we have in there. And you're going to, for providing the products and services that we're requesting in the scope. Next slide. Your contract marketing and customer support plan. So you're going to provide a detailed response, just like Exhibit B, to every question, describing your ability and strategy for promoting and supporting the contract if you're ultimately awarded. Exhibit D is your HSP. You're going to have to submit that to be eligible for award. Exhibit E is your itemized pricing sheet, so you'll have to complete this with your response as well. You need to complete any or all tabs which are applicable for your proposal. Next slide. And then your vendor references. So you have to send your reference form to a minimum of 3 companies or government agencies that you've worked for in the past. They have to respond, your references have to respond to DIR in the form provided by the due date in order to be considered. Now, this is important. The respondent, you may not submit the reference form to DIR. Your references have to submit those. There's a reference email on the respondent, the reference form that they can send those references to. So Exhibit G is the release of liability for references. Those need to be submitted for all canceled contracts. And then Exhibit H, your Edgar certification form. Next slide, please. So Marie's going to go over this a little bit in more detail later on. So you have to submit your PDAA for vendor self-assessment. Your VPAT is used for compliance with WCAG, and it has to be provided for each product offering. Your VADSIR must be provided for all proposed development services where applicable. Next slide. So next, we're going to talk about the RFO scope. And this is all in the RFO, so I don't want to get into too much detail, but we intend to contract for Dell branded products and related services. So it is the responsibility of the vendor to ensure that the products and services that they offer are within the scope. You can submit for products and value-added services in the following areas, but it is not limited to these areas. The products would be Dell computers, laptops, related accessories, Dell servers, related accessories, Dell monitors and related accessories, Dell software, Dell accessories, including but not limited to docking stations, printers, keyboard, mice, chargers, headphones, etc. Next slide. And then related services are those services that you can perform related to Dell branded products. It's described in the RFO. They can be sold separately from products. Related services can be proposed by all respondents, not only by Dell entities or their affiliates. Related services, which may be proposed by the respondent, include but are not limited to product support, installation, integration, maintenance of Dell products, managed services for Dell products, product training, comparable value-added services as designated by the manufacturer of Dell products. Next slide. So third-party products. For this solicitation, the only third-party products within scope are third-party software products that are embedded, integrated, or installed within Dell branded products at the time of purchase. Third-party software can't be sold separately from Dell branded products under the RFO. Third-party hardware and peripherals are not within the scope of this RFO. Third-party products that are not within scope can't be proposed by respondents. Permissible third-party products may be proposed as an option and will be awarded at the discretion of DIR. Any respondent third-party offerings, any respondent offering third-party products must submit a description of those products and the related pricing on the automated pricing form in Bidstamp BIS. So respondents can incorporate changes to their authorized third-party product offerings, but any changes have to be within the scope described in this section. So, and small note, by offering third-party products or adding them to your response, you're attesting that you have authorization from the manufacturer to resell those products on a DIR contract. So at a time prior to contract award and during the contract term, we can require a letter of authorization from the manufacturer stating that you do in fact have the authorization to sell that manufacturer's products or certifications to provide the services that they offer on a DIR contract. Next slide, please. So these are some exclusions. The following products or services are not included: custom application development services, deliverables-based information technology services or DBITS, cloud broker services, cloud assessment services, professional or consulting services as defined in Chapter 2254 of the Texas Government Code, and also, third-party hardware and peripherals, third-party software not embedded, integrated, or installed with Dell branded products at the time of purchase, or items that are prohibited by statute. And also, on a note, the cloud broker services and cloud assessment services, that doesn't preclude offering of other cloud services. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the evaluation criteria. Next slide. Oh, there we go. So there's pass-fail criteria. That's the admin review and the financial review. So Exhibit A, as we said before, has to be completed and signed. You have to have a completed PDAA self-assessment, VPAT and VADSR when applicable, and your hub subcontracting plan has to be completed and signed. For your financial review, you need to provide us an accurate DUNS number on item 3 of Exhibit A, respondent information, and your respondent's financial stability is reported by Dun & Bradstreet. I will say we will follow up with you after your response is submitted during this phase to verify your address. If your Dun & Bradstreet corporate address doesn't match the principal place of business as listed on your Exhibit A, so please make sure those are the same, or we will follow up. Next slide, please. Section 421, evaluation of responses. So incomplete response packages will be rejected. The financial review and HSP review are again on a pass-fail basis. Failure to provide your DUNS number may result in disqualification, and only responses that receive a passing grade move on to the next evaluation phase. Our evaluation criteria weights here are your history and experience will account for 30% of the evaluation. Your marketing and customer support plan will account for another 30% of your evaluation. And then the itemized pricing sheet will total round us off at 100 with 40%. Next slide, please. The contract. So term of the contract. We anticipate an initial term of 2 years with one optional 2-year renewal and one optional 1-year renewal. We also, in section 2.8, just so everyone's aware, we have the option to extend the contract for a stated term. And next slide, please. Additionally, on our contract website requirements, so section 7 outlines this. In addition to other requirements in Appendix A, you have to have a website that includes the following. So it'll have a current price or some mechanism for our customers to obtain specific contract pricing, MSRP list price or DIR customer price, the discount percentage off MSRP or list price, your warranty policies, and your return policies if applicable. Next slide, please. So let's take a quick look at the schedule. Everyone should be familiar with this. So this was posted September 6th. Today, the pre-proposal webinar at 1 o'clock, and the deadline for submitting questions will be 5 o'clock today. Our deadline for submissions and references will be October 16th, 2023 at 2 o'clock p.m. Central Time. And from that point in October, we'll start the evaluation process, and that will continue until any intended awards have been awarded. Next slide, please. So Exhibit D, the hub subcontracting plan. Vendors, again, have to complete this form at the comptroller's website, print, sign, and upload the signed HSP in the VIS portal. There's a link to this in the RFO so you can get the updated form. But that is a very good segue to hand it over to Teresa, who's going to go over the hub subcontracting plan.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Teresa Williamson. I'm the Hub Program Manager. Let's talk about the importance of submitting your completed signed HSP. The Hub Subcontracting Plan is also known as the HSP. A link and a sample document have been provided for you of the Hub Subcontracting Plan. Both Hub and non-Hub vendors are required to submit a properly completed and signed HSP. If you choose not to complete your HSP, you will not move forward with your bid response. So please be aware of this. The Hub office is available to answer Hub questions, and we're also offering you a precursory review. Next slide. The Hub goal for this RFO is 21.1%. If your proposed subcontracting meets or exceeds the 21.1% Hub goal, you'll complete Method A. Be sure to identify all Hub and non-Hub vendors that you'll be subcontracting with, including the anticipated dollar amounts and expected percentages of contract. So if you're completing Method A and that attachment A, you'll complete sections 1, 2, 4, and Method A. Don't forget to sign and date in your section 4 affirmation. Next slide. If you are going to be subcontracting below the Hub goal, you will complete Method B. So if you're completing Method B, be sure to solicit. You have a good faith effort, so be sure to solicit to a minimum of 3 Hub certified companies and 2 minority trade organizations. You must allow them both to time to respond back to you, and it's 7 working days. So the first day that you send documentation out, that day does not count. Make sure that you're paying attention to the working days. They don't include weekends or state holidays. So if you're completing Method B, you'll complete sections 1, 2, 4, and the Method B attachment B. Again, don't forget to include the Hub and non-Hub vendors, their approximate dollar amounts, and the percentages, and who sign in that section 4. Next slide. The last method is self-performing. So if you will be self-performing, you will complete sections 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you're performing in your self-performing justification, that's the section 3, you identify how your company will fulfill this contract with its own staff, equipment, and resources. Please do not say that you'll subcontract in the future, or if you need to, please tell us how you plan to self-perform. Next slide. All right, so this is our contact information. We are willing to offer you those precursory reviews or answer any Hub questions you may have. Please reach out to me or to our Hub team at dir.hub@dir.texas.gov. Again, those precursory reviews give us at least 10 working days to review that before the submittal of the deadline of this RFO. And the reason we ask that is because once we review it, if you have any corrections to be made before that submittal, to give yourself some time to make those corrections. But we're here for you. If you have any questions, like I said, regarding the HSP, or you have Hub questions in general regarding this RFO, please reach out to me. And when you email those questions, please copy Jared. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marie Cohan. I am the statewide Digital Accessibility Program Administrator. I'm going to go over exhibits I, J, and K. Next slide, please. The state of Texas has a statute 2054 and rules that go with that have been established by DIR related to technology supporting all Texans, especially people with disabilities. TAC 206 has to do with website accessibility. TAC 213 has to do with electronic and information resources. So pretty much all other technology. And we also follow the World Wide Web Consortium's WCAG or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Our baseline is 2.0 AA, but there are some state agencies that have a higher standard like 2.1 AA. The documentation that we require on your response is in line with our statute and with our rules and with the industry standards. Next slide, please. So there are 3 types of documents that can accompany a response. The required document, regardless of the response, is the policy-driven adoption for accessibility. I'll go over these in more detail. If you have a product offering or offerings in your response, so SaaS products, PaaS products, any types of managed services, those will require an accessibility conformance report. An accessibility conformance report is a completed VPAT. The VPAT is a template, and it is provided in your solicitation packet. We also have a Vendor Accessibility Development Services Information Request, or VADSR. The VADSR is for any type of development services or bespoke services with a vendor. This is a questionnaire that we provide. DIR reserves the right to ask for additional documentation from the vendor to support digital accessibility requirements. Next slide, please. So the policy-driven adoption for accessibility is a self-assessment of the vendor's organization. This is a mandatory document. If it is missing or materially incomplete, it could result in a disqualification and it will result in a failure on your pass-fail criteria. The self-assessment is regardless of your service or product offering. What we are looking for here is the vendor to assess its own internal accessibility practices. Are they incorporated into different business areas within the organization? Are staff trained? Do you incorporate it into your development life cycles or project management life cycles? What type of training do you provide internally? And what we're looking for here is where the organization is on its accessibility maturity journey. This is a good test of your organization and a good document to use if you want to improve your own practices internally. You can use the results of this document as a roadmap. Again, this is a required document. This is not tied to a product or a service offering, and a missing document will result in a fail. Next slide, please. This is an example of the PDA maturity matrix. There is a link in here, and this can be found on our website. And it shows the different stages of the maturity journey. So we have at the launch stage, you're just incorporating some accessibility practices. You're beginning to train staff and make it a part of your culture, all the way through to having documented policies and practices that are repeatable. The staff understands that accessibility is important. It's incorporated into different business areas, and there is training for all of the staff. Next slide, please. Next, we'll talk about the Accessibility Conformance Report, or completed VPAT. VPAT is well known in the industry, but it is just a template. And so what we're looking for is a completed template that demonstrates how your product conformed to WCAG success criteria when it was tested against those different standards. We look for completed VPATs. We look for explanations if a particular success criteria was not fully supported. So please fill that in as much as possible. We also desire for the VPAT to be completed by someone who knows the product very well and understands how the product tested against those different WCAG standards. We request that you use VPAT standard or VPAT template 2.3 or higher. And if we need additional documentation, we will request it. Our customer agencies have the right to request this documentation at any point in time during the life of the contract, because this ACR will change over time as your product goes through different versioning. Next slide, please. This is an example of how the VPAT is broken down. It covers the 4 principles of WCAG, which is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust technology. These are the different standards, and each of these standards will have success criteria that your product will test against. Again, our baseline for the state is WCAG 2.0 AA, but there are agencies and universities that require a higher standard, so just be aware of that. Next slide, please. When your product is tested against the WCAG success criteria, it will conform either fully or with exceptions, or it does not support, or it was not applicable for that particular standard, or it was not evaluated for some reason. For example, it's a level AAA standard. We are looking to see how it conforms to the success criteria. And again, please fill in the explanation areas to help us understand what the deficiency was or the gap in full support. Next slide, please. The vendor accessibility development services information request is for development services or any kind of customization services that require some sort of development lifecycle. What we're looking for here is very similar to the PDAA. We're asking questions such as, tell us how your staff is trained, what kind of testing tools do you use for your product development? Do you use assistive technology? How do you track any defects? How are those defects remediated? What alternative means do you have to support the product, etc.? And I do have some examples on the next slide, please. So the form just asks for general information on your organization. Next slide. And then these are the questions that go into more detail. Please be as specific as possible. Just writing in that your staff is trained is not sufficient. We are looking for the types of training that your staff attends, whether it's in-house or external. If it's external, who is it with? Whatever testing tools that you use. If you use assistive technology, please be more specific in those areas. Any type of alternative means that you can provide, please list those. And then we also ask for some sample work that we can look at as well. Next slide, please. On our website, we have additional information if you have any questions. We also have on our website the VPAT template if for some reason you cannot locate it in your solicitation packet. The same thing with the VABSR and the PDAA. And then DIR also now offers training for all vendors that are responding to our solicitation. There are 4 courses, each is about an hour long. They will teach on the procurement practices within the state of Texas, a general digital accessibility 101, and it'll go into more depth on all of these documents that I have reviewed today. If you're interested in signing up for training, please email statewide-accessibility@dir.texas.gov. If you email that email address, please also copy Jared on that communication so he is aware of who is requesting training. Thank you so much, and I'll hand it off now back to you, Jared.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to go over a little bit of general information. So let's see. So whenever you're asking a question before the deadline, please make sure you reference the RFO page number and section number where applicable. It helps us to sort of reference what you're talking about and provide responses. So you can submit those questions electronically during the webinar. Please use the question tab. Again, I mentioned that before. And to repeat, questions answered today are unofficial until they're posted on the ESBD in the form of an addendum. And I will add, if there are any questions we can't answer today, we do aggregate the questions that we received during the conference, and I will post responses to those in the addendum as well. So they have to be, your questions need to be submitted in writing through BidStamp Vendor Information System portal by today at 5, and those will be included on the initial addendum. And additional information on that first addendum, I will post the slides for this presentation as well, so that everybody has those. Next slide. So an important slide, disqualification of offers. We do this to make sure we don't have anybody with a really great response that gets disqualified for something small. It happens more often than you would think. So failure to sign your Exhibit A, as I mentioned before, will result in a disqualification. Also, failure to complete provide your financial information, your DUNS number, failure to complete and sign a hub subcontracting plan, as you mentioned before. Again, these are not correctable. It's not like you can submit it, the deadline passes, and we realize you don't have it, and then you can submit it. These are automatic disqualifications. Failure to complete and submit your itemized pricing sheet, failure to complete and submit your PDAA, failure to submit on or before the due date and time will also result in a disqualification. And that deadline and time are hard set. If it goes past, there's nothing we can do. The gates are locked. So please make sure you submit early. So again, any vendor responding to the RFO has to submit their response through the bid stamp vendor information system. Next slide, please. And we say this a lot because it can result in a disqualification, and we always repeat it. Respondents and all respondent representatives shall not attempt to discuss the contents of the RFO with any employees or representatives of DIR other than designated contacts. And for this one, it would be me. Failure to observe that restriction, again, can result in disqualification of any related response. Please just make sure if you're having communications with anybody at DIR regarding this solicitation, it comes to me. Next slide, please. And in line with that, so the contacts for inquiries regarding this RFO are myself. Contacts for the VIS portal are Stephanie Harrison. And again, if you would, please CC me on that just so I know what's going on. And then questions regarding the hub subcontracting plan can go to Teresa. I think the actual email would be that second one, dir.hub at dir.texas.gov. Next slide, please. And we've talked about it a few times. And again, because Stephanie isn't here, I'm going to be going over the VIS portal, and we'll kind of walk you through what you need to do there. So bid submittal. So again, any respondent responding has to submit their response through the VIS. Before you can access the VIS, you're required to provide login credentials to access a new and existing account. You'll access the Bidstamp VIS portal via the link here, and you'll enter your access credentials. If you don't already have login credentials, you can request one by clicking on the "Are you a vendor and need to request an account" button. There's also a video, and you can find this link to help you kind of set that up whenever you need to. Next slide, please. Anybody who has disabilities or needs an accommodation, you can submit a response to me and we'll get that taken care of. Please allow me 5 days to make sure that we get the accommodation you need. Next slide, please. So, okay, whenever you go on dir.texas.gov, most of the information you'll need is under the Selling Through DIR link shown here. Once you click on that link, you'll be taken to the page. Next, you'll select the Schedule of Solicitation Opportunities button, and that will take you to next page, and you'll click on Bidstamp Online Solicitation Portal. It's about halfway down the page, so make sure you scroll down. You may not see it whenever you first arrive at the page. Next slide, please. So the portal allows up to 5 users. You have to use the login credentials you received after you set up your Bidstamp account in order to log in. Next slide. In order to submit your response, you'll have to click on Open Solicitations, shown here. It's right in the middle. Next slide. Oh, there was an additional graphic there that I was not aware of. Awesome. Next slide, please. So this page will it'll show you all the RFOs that are open to receive responses. For this specific RFO, you'll navigate to DIR-CPO-TMP-582. Next slide. So please make sure you're paying attention to the date and time that responses are due. As I said before, all times are Central Standard Time, and it's a hard deadline. So please allow yourself enough time for any technical issues. Once the date and time have passed, Bidstamp will no longer allow you to submit your response, even if you're in the middle of submitting the response. So please plan accordingly. Give yourself enough time. So there's some buttons that were associated with the VIS portal. So the Respond to a Solicitation button will allow you to create a response or view a response that's in progress. Ask a question. You can submit a question to be reviewed by DIR resource. Subscribe to solicitation. If you want to receive notice of addendum notification of an addendum posting to the ESBD, you can subscribe to the solicitation. View solicitation documents. You can navigate to the ESBD posting for a solicitation and look at all the documents that are associated. So these are also the buttons that are on the VIS portal. So delete will delete all information that's been uploaded and the response record before the response has been submitted. Once it's been submitted, though, you have to use the withdrawal button that will appear on solicitation submission. Submit will submit the response record and all associated information. Ask a question. Again, questions can be submitted up to the question deadline. Creating a pricing form. So you'll have to create the pricing form in VIS to have it evaluated. New RFO response documents. So you'll upload your required files in the RFO posted on the RFO posted on the ESBD here. New vendor references. So you'll submit a new reference's email address and opt to send the vendor a reference so that they can respond. So it's highly recommended you name the required response documents exactly the same as they are on the RFO, so you don't miss loading a required document. It's easy, it makes it easier to identify, and it makes it easier for us to review them after the fact. It's also strongly recommended that you load the documents in the format they're provided as exhibits in the RFO, so Word or Excel usually. Many times when you convert a document to PDF, it'll truncate the document and it'll leave off important information that's needed for the document to be considered complete. So in addition, if you're using the electronic signature function, please be sure that there's a valid electronic signature and not just a typed name in a signature field. If you're not able to include a valid or verified electronic signature on pages where a signature is required, please print it and ink sign it and upload a copy to the bid stamp portal just to be safe. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the itemized pricing sheet. So section 2.3 goes over this. So for the purposes of pricing and obtaining pricing and evaluating responses, you have to submit your Exhibit E pricing sheet. Respondents have to respond in the way described in the RFO. So there's a little bit more information on how you need to fill that out. So we're not going to go into great detail here. So products and services pricing for this RFO, you'll see whenever you open up the pricing sheet, there are 3 tabs. And you need to fill out those as appropriate. And so tab 1 is going to be your instructions. You can reference that for how to fill out the pricing sheet. Tab 2 is brand products and related services detail. Please don't change the formulas. Those are in there to calculate pricing after the administration fee has been applied, or to calculate the discount, the ultimate DIR price with the discount and the manufacturer, the MSRP price. Make sure you copy and paste the formula when you're adding new lines as well. Otherwise, it won't calculate. Next slide, please. So double check the formulas, make sure they're all right, and don't change the format. So we encourage, on the volume discount, we encourage you to offer volume pricing or discount for specific services or products at volume. And you can propose by product or service category, brand, or any group of products or services that's applicable to your pricing structure if the discount off MSRP is the same for that product or service category or group of products or services. The DIR customer price will include all shipping, handling fees, and DIR admin fee. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the mandatory submission. So the documents you need to make sure that you have submitted in order to be considered complete for evaluation. Again, Exhibit A, signed. Exhibit A, Attachment 1, if you have canceled contracts. Exhibit A1, which is essentially, it's usually your exceptions document, and there's instructions on Exhibit A on how to create that and submit it if you have any exceptions. Exhibit B, your respondent history and experience. Exhibit C, your marketing and support plan. Exhibit D, your hub subcontracting plan. Exhibit E, your itemized pricing sheet. Exhibit F, your reference form. Again, those will be submitted by your references, not by you. Next slide, please. Exhibit G, your release of liability for reference. Exhibit H, your Edgar certification form. Exhibit I, your PDAA. Exhibit J, your ACRs or VPATs. Your Exhibit K, your VADSIR, if applicable, and letters of authorization for your brands proposed. And please be sure to create your price form and bid stamp. There's a button we talked about a minute ago where you can submit that. And it should come from your Exhibit E itemized price sheet. So if it's on your, any information that's submitted in your VIS pricing sheet should also be on the Exhibit E itemized price sheet. Next slide, please. Rejection of responses. So 3.9 says the DIR has the sole discretionary authority to reserve the right to reject any and all responses received as a result of the RFO. If they don't comply with the mandatory submission requirements, they may be rejected. Also, we reserve the right to accept or reject in whole or in part any responses submitted and waive minor technicalities when it's in the best interests of the state. Next slide. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break. If you have any questions, please make sure you submit those. If you could, reference the RFO section number and page number. Any questions, again, that are answered today are unofficial until they're posted on the ESBD. And then until 5 today, you can submit additional questions through Bidstamp VIS. And those will be included in the addendum that's ultimately going to be posted once we have responses for you in the ESBD. So for now, we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and I'll see you back here in 10. right, everybody, we're going to give it about 1 more minute, and then we will pick up with the questions that have been submitted. Okay, and we are back. It looks like we have 2 questions. So I'm going to go ahead and read through those, and we'll see if we can't get some responses to you. So question number 1 says, if I'm subcontracting a portion of my work, do I need to have my subcontractors get references? Teresa, would you maybe be able to handle that one?
Sure. No, any subcontracting work is going to be an agreement between you and the subcontractor. You do not need to get references for your bid.
Okay. And our next question, if I'm an authorized Dell reseller and hub vendor that will perform most of the work, but will need some subcontracting assistance, do I still need to do the hub good faith search for my subs? And Teresa, can you handle that one as well?
Sure. It's going to be dependent on the method that you are completing. If you are not meeting the hub goal, then yes, that's that method B, and you will be required to do your good faith effort by reaching out to hub vendors.
Okay, I think that's all of our questions. And I just have a few more slides with little reminder information. If we could go to the next slide. So again, I know we said this before, any questions that we answered today in the conference are unofficial until posted on the ESBD in the form of an addendum, and any changes or additional information regarding this RFO will be posted as an addendum to RFO DIR-CPO-TMP-582 on the ESBD. And it is the responsibility of vendors to monitor the ESBD website for these addenda. So please make sure you're checking on that. Next slide. And again, the solicitation schedule. Just a quick reminder, deadline for questions today at 5. And the deadline for responses and vendor references to be submitted is 2 o'clock Central Time, October 16th, 2023. Mark it on your calendars. And then from October, again, we'll be doing evaluations and awards until they are completed. And lastly, if you have any questions about the solicitation, you can either submit them in the VIS portal, or if you have inquiries, you can send them to me at the email listed here. I will be sure to get back with you. And if there's nothing else, that's the end of our presentation. And I appreciate everyone's time, and good luck on your responses.